At 9:38 a.m., we continue with the broadcast this morning, and we are now unpacking or doing an analysis. And the questions we are asking is: Are government coalitions working against the background of what has been playing out with coalitions in local government in particular? And we're joined this morning by political analyst Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Dr. Breakfast, good morning to you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, wonderful you're able to join us. And, we know the political dynamics that have been playing out for a very, very long time, and looking at political parties with different ideologies. And, some of them obviously chalk and cheese. Their focus areas are completely different. But we've seen with the results of the local government elections where many have been actually forced into coalitions. And the question we are raising this morning is: Are these government coalitions working?
Of course not, because when one examines the coalition formations covering the period of 2016 until to date, it's quite clear that they have been unworkable and unstable, simply because there seems to be a missing link between coalition formations and some provisions of conflict management, meaning that the political elite have a tendency to rush into these coalition formations without developing a conflict management mechanism to deal with their own contradictions. Now, these coalition formations, they require a very nuanced and subtle approach, which is workable. The other phenomenon that is at play here is that South Africa doesn't have a long-standing history of coalition formation. During apartheid, the political landscape was dominated by the National Party. Before that, in the early 1900s, we had only two coalitions. The first one was in 1924 between the National Party and the Labour Party. The second one was in 1933. But subsequent to that, the National Party dominated the landscape until the ANC rose to prominence and then lost power, basically. So what I'm saying is that this is a phenomenon that is drawn from international best practices. So we have not institutionalized the conflict management mechanisms to respond to some of the contradictions that arise out of this coalition formation.
Yes, interesting you say, Dr. Breakfast, talking about the dispute resolution mechanism, because we know for the fact that South Africa has already headed and will almost also be possibly even at a national level heading towards an era of coalition politics. And one of the biggest problems at this point in time is the disagreement between the political parties. We've seen over and over again motions of no confidence, and then the same party that is in coalition with the party would actually vote for that motion of no confidence. And all of this, in trying to unpack, what is actually playing out in the background. In your mind, what should some of the key issues political parties need to take into account?
First of all, I think there is a need for an independent body that can be facilitated by SALGA to enforce what political parties have agreed upon. What is the point of agreeing on this and that, but there is no regulatory mechanism to enforce those agreements? To me, that is useless. That's why some people, they are making these coalition formations about musical chairs, about themselves, and putting the needs of citizens on the back foot, or making the needs of citizens to take the back seat. So that's the problem, because there's no regulatory mechanism. So I think that is key and fundamental, so that if people agree on this and that, they could be held accountable. But also, one of the hallmarks of democracy, besides electoral politics, is active citizenry. You need active citizens. Citizens must be taken on board when these coalition formations are made, so that they can express their will. Because as things stand, it's only arrangements that are made by politicians. When the electorate go to polling stations, they don't get the opportunity to make a cross whether they would agree with coalition formations or not. It's the political elite that enter into these formations. So that makes then these coalition formations less democratic.
Yes, in fact, what you're saying is very, very true. Because I mean, when you and I vote for a in an election, we are voting for a party, and we're not voting for
Yes.
a coalition. And I think this is absolutely important. This is critical. But also at the same time, I think the one thing that one cannot lose focus on is when we're looking at these coalitions that are being formed. It is more about the party. It is more about personalities, and I think that is another area that is problematic, Dr. Breakfast.
No, of course. In fact, the other issue that emerged out of these deliberations between coalition partners is that some of the decisions that were made by political parties to work together were made at national level. I can make a lot of examples. The coalition in KZN between the ANC and other coalition partners to govern. I think at Tekwini, that was a decision that was made by national leaders, and there were some prominent personalities that were involved. Also, the coalition that the EFF and the ANC and other partners entered into in the Nelson Mandela Bay, Julius Malema played a prominent role there, even in Tswane. And so that confirms what you've just said as well, that sometimes decision making revolves around certain persons. And that is sad because it omits the involvement of the local leaders who understand the context in which they operate in.
Well, definitely. And also, I think, Dr. Breakfast, when one looks at coalition governments right across the entire world, and we find in certain instances, I mean, Israel is a classic example where we've seen election after election as a result of these coalition governments. At some point in time, it reaches breaking point, and next moment you are calling for another election. And looking at our situation in South Africa, okay, we haven't had coalition governments at a national level, but that could easily occur, and one needs to see or learn from what is playing out in many parts around the world where there are coalition governments, and otherwise we will be faced with the same scenario.
No, of course, we need to draw from international best practices. We don't live in an island. So I agree with you. I mean, besides the example that you have used, I mean, we have had some successful coalition formations in France, Germany, Holland, and also in other parts of the world. So I think we can learn a thing or two uh, in terms of how to manage, disputes or contradictions, so that politicians don't see politics as a zero-sum game or as a win-lose situation, but by contrast, see politics as a win-win situation, so that at the end of the day, they can promote development for the majority.
Exactly. And also, I think, why we find problems like, for instance, at local government level is a lack of maturity in dealing with coalitions and coalition governments and differences that arise between these coalition formations.
No, no, of course. But that lack of maturity is also caused by, I would say, arrogance amongst the political elite. But also sometimes you find that there are power brokers that want to manage power within their own political parties based on certain strategic alliances, as opposed to the aspirations of the people, whereby they will distribute power to certain people by determining who should hold certain positions at the council. Because you must remember, at the council there are, in my opinion, three strategic positions that normally coalition parties fight over, and that is the position of the mayor, the speaker, and maybe the chief whip. So sometimes some power brokers want to pull the strings behind closed doors in terms of behaving like they've won the elections, though they are in a coalition.
Well, Dr. Breakfast, thank you very much for that. And as always, for your time with us here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best, sir. Please take care. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast with us this morning, unpacking and analyzing the whole debate surrounding coalitions in South Africa. With that, we're going to go for a break. We come back. We will be talking with Abash Lali.